What up everyone, it's your boy JOLSID, and today we have a really special episode. We'll be talking about mental health and how technology, especially an application in your iPhone or Android device, can help us with emotional intelligence, and eventually they're also claiming to have therapeutic purposes. So let's go have a chat with the founder of this company called PsychApps, and the application itself is called eQuoo, and what's the science behind it and the technology. Without wasting any time, let's do this. Welcome back guys. Today I'll be interviewing Silja Litvin, and Silja has a really interesting background. She was a model for 17 years. Now she's a psychologist, and since 2016 she is now also an entrepreneur. By bringing her on the show, I wanted to know from a psychologist who's also an entrepreneur, just wanted to understand their mindset, how they overcome their day-to-day struggles, because all of us go through ups and downs, right? And also, prior to coming onto the show, I requested Silja to have access to the app so at least I can use it and I can provide her with my honest feedback. Enjoy the interview with Silja. Silja, you have been a model, you have traveled all over the world, you have lived in so many countries, and now you are also a founder. How did you get started on this?
Well, when I was small, we traveled all over the world. We moved a lot. So I was born in Germany, then I was raised in Southern California, then we moved to Luxembourg. And you know, the transition from California to Luxembourg was pretty much traumatic to me as a child. California was so laid back and friendly and the sun was shining. And Luxembourg was the old European mentality in a different language. Like they speak Portuguese, they speak French, they speak Luxembourgish and German. And it was just overwhelming. And when we moved to Germany, things settled down a little bit, but I was always confused about like what was going on around me and why people acted the way they did. And on my sister's 15th birthday, I was 12, she got a book about body language. And I remember to this day opening it and my mind being blown by the idea that there was a science that could help you understand why people felt and did the things they did. And from that day on, I think I was 12, I wanted to become a psychologist. When I was 16, I was shopping in H&M and I was scouted as a model, and I'm like, I'm gonna be a model, and my mom was like, no. So I had to wait 2 years before I was 18, so I didn't need her consent anymore, and I became a model.
Awesome.
I traveled the world. I've been in like 72 different countries. It's a very good experience, I think, to be an entrepreneur, because you're working with a lot of uncertainties. Like you never know what the next month is going to be. You're working with a lot of rejection. Like every casting, every job that's set up, you may or may not get, right? So it prepares you to be self-sufficient, to be flexible, and not to take rejection personally and just say, okay, next one then, right? So I think that was the good groundwork. But all this time, I still had in the back of my mind psychology being my one big love. And my mom was always saying, what are you going to do with your life?
So being a model wasn't good enough?
Of course not.
Wow.
She was so worried for me all these years, and she's happy now that it turned out halfway okay.
You must have been good to do that for 17 years.
A catalog pro. Yeah, it was a good experience. I saw a lot of the world. I made good friends. You know, I had lots of opportunity to discover new countries and cultures, and that was a great part of my life. But you know, psychology was always in the back of my head. So during the last few years, I studied psychology, and then at the end of my master's, I felt like I wanted to do research. I loved research. I loved psychology. I think I'm very blessed, because sometimes, you know, you want to be something when you're small, like an astronaut or something, and then when you get there, you're like, hey, it's probably not my thing. And the more I learned about psychology, the more I loved it. So I actually grew into it more and more. And I was very lucky that my professor was very open-minded and very young. And so when I pitched the idea to be able to do an application, he was like, go for it. So my whole business started out as my PhD thesis. And I would be talking to people about my PhD, and they would be like, oh, this is wonderful. This is what we need, you know, for like my mother or myself, or this is what I could have used half a year ago. So I started thinking about making a business out of it. I looked around and I saw a lot of apps that were good, but they're what I call fluffy apps, like Headspace, right? Yeah. Headspace is wonderful. You know, I use it. I love it, but it's not therapy.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, so there's room for therapeutic applications, and I developed the app. It was a proper clinical application with a positive pre-evaluation. We had over 1,200 participants and everything, but people were not sticking to the game afterwards, so you couldn't make it to a product. And I thought, okay, I did a really bad product. Like, this is embarrassing. And then I went back to the book and saw that most of all of the digital mental health products and a lot of the digital health products have the same problem with retention. It's just like people don't stick to things that are work.
Yeah.
And then my CTO introduced me to Collision Studios, and they're a gaming company. And I thought, you know, a lot of the time, this is what the tech world says, is that disruption happens when two unlikely fields get together.
Yep.
And I think gaming and psychology are so unlikely, but at the end of the day, they make so much sense together, because gaming industry in a way hacks the brain's reward system.
Yeah.
And if you can do the same to actually add value and benefit, a health benefit into their life, that's amazing.
That's awesome. And have you thought about like introducing this to maybe like insurance companies, like to grow this app to the next level? Or is it more targeted toward teenagers? Like, what's your target audience with this app? So I think I asked two questions at this point. One is, what's your next plan with this app? And second is, what's your target audience?
Yeah. Okay, so my plan is to develop an application that people can use pretty much for the rest of their lives if they want to.
Okay.
And is something, right now we're subclinical, so we don't actually treat mental illness, but we boost mental health, resilience, life satisfaction by playing the app, by giving people tools that they can use in everyday life.
Okay.
And the next step is to add therapeutic features to it.
Okay.
But you don't have to use it, right? You can just play the game and, you know, do it on the level that is non-clinical. But if you do feel that, for example, you know, you're having a bad day, but you've had a bad day for a month now, and that you might actually benefit from the part that treats anxiety or the part that treats depression, then you can go for it and you can play while you're being, you know, helping yourself.
For example, let's say I'm feeling depressed and it's been a month.
Yeah.
And if I go and play, let's say, one level, that's helping me with depression.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the same level if I play next time, or is that going to change?
Well, the story line changes, but the steps stay the same. So you won't be going back and playing the same part of the game over and over again. You'll be leveling up. And then you can go back and play it again if you want to, but at the end of the day, you go into the storyline and you go into the next level, and then you learn something new in the next level, and you treat yourself, and so on and so forth, and that's how you grow in the game.
Stories were really cool.
Thank you.
Do you guys have like story writers? Like who's writing all these stories?
Yeah, so it's a mix of a psychological team. They're all accredited psychologists and myself.
Okay.
And I think I'm a very avid reader, and I have a little bit of like a goofy sense of humor that brings lightness to the stories. So we write them together, and then we double check amongst each other that, you know, they're psychologically valid, that they don't use any language that can be triggering, that, you know, they're integrative and, you know, helpful. So we double check. So all of the stories have been written by psychologists. Yeah.
Obviously, mental health is a big thing right now.
Yeah.
I think we have an epidemic.
Yeah.
So was there any level of hesitation from them, like, or were they on board right away, especially after Luminosity?
I think the people that I approach are already kind of like primed for that market space.
Awesome.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if you go towards an investor, it's all about money and numbers and metrics. So they love the idea, and they want to kind of like know how we're doing. So they all say, okay, you know what, why don't you launch? Why don't you get metrics? Why don't you get revenue? And then you call me back.
Yeah, for the C-zone, right?
Exactly. So they're kind of like, see, if we'll survive up to the point that we don't actually need them, then they'll come in and say, okay, take my money. And if not, then, you know, we're just like one of the startups that, you know, we'll make it. Like, I'm gonna knock on wood right now.
No, you have to. Thanks for tuning in, guys. In our part 2 of this conversation, we'll be going over the hacks that Silja as a psychologist and an entrepreneur used